Hey folks, it's Brian again with another installment of the Red Book of Magic. We're going to finish up the H spells, and I've got some GM concerns on one of these. Okay, so new spell, Heat Blast. Can only be used on Earth that's been previously warmed by either the Earth Warm spell or is naturally warmed to at least 4 degrees Celsius. In other words, near a volcano, right? You have to be able to see the ground, but it causes a blast of heat to erupt from the ground, doing 3d6 to the target's constitution. Now, I'm assuming that's like a damage, you subtract that amount, right? I'm assuming it's treated in the same way we would treat diseases, as they recover points over time. Like when you lose points of stat points from diseases, you can get them back over time. But man, if this blasts your constitution down to 0, you're dead, right? Can be stacked, which then allows you to add another target. Good to go. Okay, Hibernate, another new spell. The target enters a deep sleep. Metabolism slows tremendously. They don't need to eat, don't need to drink, don't need to urinate or defecate. There is no damage from heat or cold. While in this state, they cannot die from the loss of hit points, though you can die from wounds and spells that kill, right? Instant death stuff, right? They will recover their hit points at the normal healing rate while they are hibernating. So, healing rate every week kind of thing. Okay. Once the spell expires, the target awakens and suffers the effects of any damage that had not been healed while they were hibernating. Interesting. Okay. Hide Fire. Apparently this is an old one. I did not realize that. It's got a cool picture. Okay, you cast a spell on a container, any size or type. Could even be a human hand, right? Burlap sack, a pail. This makes you think of. I saw a picture of Abraham taking Isaac up to the mountain to sacrifice him, and he had this pot with holes in it, where he had like a 100-hour candle inside it, right? That's how he carried fire around, so you could go out someplace and actually have fire, because making fire from sparks is next to impossible, and even with a bow, still takes a lot of time. If you know what you're doing. If you don't get me on fire. Especially making fire out of sparks in the dark. Anyway, yeah, right. Not going to happen. Okay, anyway, the container, it permits the container to hold an appropriately sized fire without burning or putting the fire out. So this would be very handy for adventurers to have around. It just takes, so they have to make fire very easily while they're out adventuring. I like this spell. This is cool. Okay. And they give an example. You could even close your hand. If it was in your hand, you close your hand. There's no light. Open it up. There's light. Okay. Oh, does it say anything about heat, though? Interesting. It didn't say anything about heat. Because if you close your hand on a flame, you're going to burn, right? Although when it goes out, does it go out? And then you open it, it comes back? Maybe? I don't know. But anyway, it says here somewhere, though, that for each rune point stacked, the intensity of the fire can be increased by 1. What that means, they don't explain. What does that mean? Generally, oh, here he goes. Explains it now. I should have reread this again just before I started recording. Okay, each point of intensity is equal to 1d6 points of damage. But in your hand. Now, when I was in Australia, I was at an SEA event, and there was a girl there who was doing was handling fire. Right, she had this liquid stuff that she'd pour off and light it on fire and do stuff with it. It was kind of cool. You know? So if it's moving fast enough, I suppose it's not an issue. But if you've got a fire in your hand and you close your hand to hide it, does it still get off heat? That's a question. Take d6 of damage every time you close your hand. I don't think people will be doing that. Okay, Hide Wolf. Also an old one. When cast on an inanimate bundle of goods about the size of an amphora, although I've seen amphora from this big to this big, the bundle becomes invisible for a whole day to everyone except for the caster and those who are watching when the spell is cast. For each stacked point, you get to add another bundle. Magic items will be hidden this way because they cannot be sensed, even with other magical spells, except that the presence of the hide wealth spell can be detected. If you move your goods, the spell dissipates for each point of extension stacked with. Okay, duration is special because it lasts a day. If you add extension to that, it doubles every time instead of doing the extension stuff. And for the first couple of points of extension, that's worth it, but anything past that, I mean, lasting for a week or a season or a year rather than 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Okay, high wagon. New spell. Cast on a moving wheeled vehicle. Increases the movement of the vehicle and the attached pulling animals by 1d10 points. If you cut the animals loose, they're no longer connected, their speed is back to normal. Okay, humor. Immediately upon casting, the recipient target becomes filled with a certainty that nothing will matter at the end of time and all fears and doubts about their actions will be lifted. The recipient chuckles and laughs throughout the duration of the spell, as this realization is both liberating and joyous. Their attack percentages are increased by half, like fanaticism, but without the effects, I would say accompanying effects on parry or defensive actions, because it sounds to me like they're trying to scrunch this together, like fanaticism, but without this negative stuff, right? Which begs the question then, is their parry increased by half again, like their attack, because we only have one skill now? We don't have two? I think so. Okay, anyway, the user must seek out enemies to fight for the spell's duration. They will not attack known friends and allies. Okay, each rune point stacked with the spell extends the duration as per the extension spell. Why mention that? Just cast extension 1 instead of stacking 1 point onto this spell, and you got your thing. So extension works like normal spells, which is like a given, right? Okay, you cannot combine this spell with spells like Axe Trance and Berserker and Fanaticism or other combat inspirational type spells, right? Things that modify your attack chance. And, I can kind of see that, especially because these things would conflict, right? Humor and fanaticism don't really go together. Okay, Hunter Prey Link. New spell. Must be cast on a target, as all spells must be, right? Okay. But it can be the caster. Okay. But the target must be actively pursued by a pursuer. Although I have to admit, I've never been pursued by anything other than a pursuer. Okay. If more than one hunter pursues the target, the caster must specify which hunter is affected. Otherwise, the first hunter who sees the target is the one affected by the spell. If you stack it, it allows you to cast it on another hunter, or allows another hunter to be affected because you cast it on a target. The target is the one who's being pursued. Okay, so there's some kind of flip-flop here stuff going on. Okay, for the duration of the spell, the target will not be caught by the pursuers, regardless of how fast the hunter moves or how clever they are in tracking and setting traps. The targets will always be able to avoid capture. If the target is skilled enough, they may even be able to lose pursuers completely. How does this apply to the chase rules? Where we're making decks and speed rolls and stuff to follow and keep and trace until you get 5 lengths out where you lose sight of them. I would just cut it You cast Hunter Prey Link on yourself, and there's one guy chasing you. He's the hunter, right? And he's lost you. That's how I would handle it. We're going to do the chase rules, except they don't apply now because he's got this thing going on. So you have these skill enough to be able to lose him completely. I just make those 5 rolls, which you don't need to make now because he can never catch you. Or maybe we apply it to the chase rules where he can never decrease the distance, only keep it the same. Or obviously if he loses and you win, it increases the distance. I can see that for rule application. During the chase rule sequencing, the hunter can never decrease the distance between the hunter and the prey. Okay, hurling. And this is actually the spell I mentioned. I meant when I mentioned earlier, and I've got some GM concerns about. Okay. For the duration of the spell, all objects thrown by the caster have the range multiplied by 5. Good to go, no problems there. But this next sentence, thus, a thrown javelin's normal range of 20 meters becomes 100, and its maximum range becomes 250 when hurled by somebody affected by this spell. I think there's some extra words in there you don't need, but it begs the question of, what is this 250 meter maximum range stuff? If you look at thrown weapons in the book, not effective after 20 meters. Period. Okay, so increases by 5 is now not effective after 100 meters. Where's this 250 come involved? Now, if we look at the missile weapon stuff where it talks about medium and long range, where long range is double effective range, which would be 200 meters in this case, but it's 250 now instead. So does that mean that between 100 and 175 you have 0.5% chance to hit, and between 175 and 250 you've got a 0.25% chance to hit? Where's the rule application? Where this 250, if they would just left it, thus a thrown javelin's normal range of 20 meters becomes 100 meters, period. No problem. But they threw this maximum range thing in here. What's that supposed to mean? Now get this. We can stack this thing, right? And every time you stack it, you increase the multiplier by 5. So if it's 2 points instead of 100 meters, it's now 200 meters, right? To the javelin. And if you look at all the thrown weapons, they're all 20 meters except for if you get the Atlatl, which adds 10, which would make it 30, I guess, for your dart or your javelin. Why did they just say thrown weapons now have a range of 100? But anyway, so we talk about increasing that normal range, right, by 5 or 10 or 15 times, right? It goes on to say it does not affect range, but missile weapons like bows and crossbows, good to go. It's partially effective to blow guns and slings. So range multiplier is just 2 instead of 5. Yeah, okay. I would say slings are thrown weapons, and I'd give them 5, but that's just me. But again, nowhere do we talk about max range again. Does the max range keep increasing? If your javelin's normal range is now 200, is your max range now 5? And we take the difference between 5 and 200, which is 300 and 150, so at 350, up to 3, from 2 to 350 is now half, and from 350 to 500 is a quarter? I don't know. That's the end of the H spells. Happy gaming.